I watched through my frosted window as the blizzard turned my quiet neighborhood in Brattleboro, Vermont into a scene from a disaster movie. And I had no idea that before this storm was over, my HOA president would commit theft and trespassing that would land her in actual handcuffs. My name is Frank Everett, and I had lived in the Maplewood Heights subdivision for exactly 3 years when this whole nightmare unfolded. I was a software developer who worked from home, which meant I spent a lot of time observing the peculiar dynamics of suburban homeowner association politics, whether I wanted to or not. Our HOA president was a woman named Patricia Cunningham, and she fit every stereotype of what the internet had dubbed a Karen, so perfectly that it was almost comical. Patricia was in her late 40s, had that distinctive asymmetrical bob haircut with blonde highlights, drove a white Lexus SUV, and seemed to believe that her position as HOA president gave her authority comparable to a federal judge. The blizzard hit on a Thursday morning in late January. Weather forecasters had been warning about it for days, talking about how this nor'easter was going to dump anywhere from 2 to 3 feet of snow across Vermont and New Hampshire. I had prepared accordingly, stocking up on groceries, making sure my generator had fuel, and most importantly, bringing my snow removal equipment into the garage. I had a good quality snow blower, a sturdy metal shovel with a reinforced handle that I had paid $60 for at the hardware store, and a backup plastic shovel just in case. The snow started falling around 6 in the morning. I made myself coffee and settled into work, figuring I would deal with the driveway once the storm passed. By noon, there was already more than a foot of accumulation, and the wind was howling so loudly that I could barely hear myself think. The power flickered twice but stayed on, which I considered a small miracle. Around 2 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Patricia, sent to the entire HOA group chat. The message read, "Reminder to all residents that per HOA bylaws section 4.7, all driveways and sidewalks must be cleared within 24 hours of snowfall cessation. Failure to comply will result in fines of $100 per day. This is for everyone's safety and property values." I stared at the message in disbelief. The snow was still coming down so hard that I could barely see across the street, and Patricia was already threatening fines. Several other residents responded with confused or annoyed messages, pointing out that the storm was still in full force. Patricia replied with, "I'm simply reminding everyone of the rules. The 24-hour period begins when the snow stops, not when it's convenient for you." I tossed my phone aside and went back to work, trying to ignore the growing pile of passive-aggressive messages in the group chat. Patricia had been a thorn in everyone's side since she had been elected HOA president 2 years ago. She had successfully pushed through rules about what colors residents could paint their front doors, when Christmas decorations could be displayed, and even what type of mailboxes were acceptable. Several neighbors had complained to me privately about her behavior, but no one wanted to rock the boat enough to challenge her directly. The snow finally stopped around 8 that evening. I ventured outside to assess the damage and nearly lost my boot in a drift that came up to my thigh. My driveway was completely buried, as was my car. The street itself was impassable, just a smooth white expanse that gave no indication where the road ended and the yards began. I could see a few neighbors attempting to dig out, their flashlights bobbing in the darkness like fireflies. I decided to wait until morning to tackle my driveway. The temperature was dropping rapidly, and I had no desire to give myself a heart attack shoveling in the dark. I sent a quick message to the HOA chat saying I would clear my driveway first thing in the morning, then made myself dinner and settled in for the night. I woke up at 6 the next morning, ate a quick breakfast, and bundled up in my heavy winter coat, insulated gloves, and thick boots. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold. It would have been beautiful if I was not facing hours of backbreaking labor. I opened my garage door and immediately knew something was wrong. My snow blower was exactly where I had left it, but my metal shovel was gone. The backup plastic shovel was still there, but my good shovel, the one I had specifically purchased because it could handle heavy, wet snow without bending, had vanished. I stepped into the garage and looked around, thinking maybe I had moved it and forgotten. But no, it was definitely gone. I checked the corners behind my car, even in my garbage bins. Nothing. Someone had come into my garage and taken my shovel. My first thought was that one of my neighbors had borrowed it, but that did not make sense. Why would someone take a shovel without asking, especially during a blizzard when everyone needed their equipment? And how had they gotten into my garage? I specifically remembered closing the door the night before. I was standing there trying to figure out what had happened when I heard footsteps crunching through the snow. I turned to see my neighbor, Jeff Martinez, trudging toward me. Jeff lived 3 houses down and was one of the few people in the neighborhood I actually liked. He was around my age, worked as a high school teacher, and had a laid-back attitude that was the complete opposite of Patricia's control-freak tendencies. "Hey Frank," Jeff called out, slightly out of breath. "You missing a shovel by any chance?" My stomach dropped. "Yeah, actually. My metal one with the red handle, you seen it." Jeff pointed toward the end of the street. "Dude, Patricia has it. I saw her about 20 minutes ago using it to clear her sidewalk. I recognized it because of that distinctive handle. I was going to come tell you, but I had to finish my own driveway first." I felt anger surge through me like electricity. She took my shovel out of my garage. "Looks like it, man. I don't know how she got into your garage, but that's definitely your shovel. The red handle and that reinforced blade, that's yours." I did not even bother responding. I just started walking toward Patricia's house, my boots punching through the crusty snow with each furious step. Jeff called after me, asking if I wanted him to come along, but I barely heard him. All I could think about was the fact that Patricia Cunningham, the woman who never missed an opportunity to lecture everyone about following rules, had stolen my property. Patricia's house was at the corner of our subdivision, a large colonial-style home with black shutters and a perfectly manicured lawn that was currently buried under 3 feet of snow. As I got closer, I could see her in her driveway, wearing an expensive-looking purple parka and designer snow boots, using my shovel to clear a path to her mailbox. "Patricia," I shouted as I approached. She looked up and I saw a flicker of something, maybe guilt, maybe annoyance, cross her face. "Good morning, Frank. Glad to see you're finally getting started on your driveway. Remember, you have until 8 tonight to get it cleared or fines will be assessed." I stopped at the edge of her property, breathing hard from the exertion of walking through the deep snow. "That's my shovel you're using." Patricia looked down at the shovel in her hands as if seeing it for the first time. No, this is mine. I've had it for years." "That's a lie and you know it. That's the shovel I bought last month from Anderson's Hardware. It has a distinctive red handle with a rubber grip, and there's a small scratch on the blade from when I hit a rock last week. That's my shovel, Patricia." She straightened up, and I could see her shifting into what I thought of as her HOA president mode, that imperious attitude she adopted when she wanted to intimidate someone. "Frank, I don't appreciate your tone. This shovel belongs to me. If you're missing equipment, perhaps you should take better care of your belongings." I took perfect care of my belongings. They were in my locked garage until you stole them. Patricia's face flushed red. "How dare you accuse me of theft?" "I am the president of this HOA, and I will not be spoken to this way. I suggest you leave my property immediately and focus on clearing your driveway before you incur fines. Give me back my shovel, Patricia. This is my shovel. Now leave, or I'll call the police and report you for harassment." I could feel my hands shaking, though whether from cold or anger I was not sure. "Call them, please. I would love to explain to the police how you broke into my garage and stole my property." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "You have no proof of anything. And I'm warning you, Frank, if you continue to harass me, I'll make sure the HOA takes action. We can make your life very difficult." I stood there for a moment, staring at this woman who somehow believed she was above the rules she forced everyone else to follow. Then I pulled out my phone. "Fine. I'm calling the police myself. You're going to waste police resources during a state of emergency over a shovel," Patricia said, but I noticed her grip tighten on the handle. "No, I'm going to report a theft. Big difference." I dialed 911, and when the dispatcher answered, I explained the situation as calmly as I could. The dispatcher told me that because of the blizzard, response times were delayed, but they would send an officer as soon as one was available. She advised me not to confront the suspect and to wait for police arrival. I hung up and looked at Patricia. "Police are on their way. I'm going to wait right here." Patricia's confident demeanor cracked slightly. "This is ridiculous. You're really going to involve the police over a shovel?" "Fine, take it." She held out the shovel toward me. "Take your precious shovel and get off my property." "No," I said. "We're going to wait for the police. You stole my property and I want that documented." "I didn't steal anything. I made a mistake. I thought this was mine." "A mistake? You somehow mistook the shovel in my garage for yours. Did you make a mistake when you broke into my garage too?" Patricia's mouth opened and closed a few times. "Your garage door was open. I saw the shovel sitting there, and I thought someone had borrowed mine and returned it to the wrong garage. It was an honest mistake. My garage door was not open. I closed it last night." "Well, it was open this morning. Maybe you forgot." We stood there in a standoff, the cold air making my face numb while we waited for the police. Several neighbors had noticed the commotion and were watching from their windows or pretending to work on their own snow removal while obviously eavesdropping. I saw Jeff standing in his driveway, phone in hand, probably recording the whole thing. About 40 minutes later, a police cruiser slowly made its way down our street, its lights off but its presence unmistakable. A police officer got out, a woman in her 30s with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her nameplate read Officer Stephanie Walsh. "Someone called about a theft?" she asked, looking between Patricia and me. I stepped forward. "I did, officer. I'm Frank Everett. I live at 247 Birch Lane, 3 houses down. This morning I discovered that my snow shovel was missing from my garage. My neighbor informed me that he saw this woman, Patricia Cunningham, using my shovel to clear her driveway. That's my shovel she's holding." Officer Walsh turned to Patricia. "Madam, is this your shovel?" Patricia lifted her chin. "Yes, it is. This is all a misunderstanding." Mr. Everett seems confused. "It's not her shovel," I said firmly. "I purchased it last month from Anderson's Hardware on Main Street. I can provide a receipt. The shovel has a distinctive red handle with a rubber grip, and there's a small scratch on the left side of the blade. I can describe it in detail because it's mine." Officer Walsh walked over to Patricia and examined the shovel. "May I see this, madam?" Patricia reluctantly handed it over. Officer Walsh looked it over carefully, noting the red handle and the scratch I had mentioned. "Do you have a receipt for this shovel, Miss Cunningham?" "I don't keep receipts for things I purchased years ago," Patricia said. This is my shovel. I've had it for years. That's interesting, Officer Walsh said, because this shovel has a price sticker residue on the handle that looks fairly recent. And Mr. Everett, you said you bought this last month. Yes, madam. December 15th. I can pull up my bank statement right now and show you the charge from Anderson's Hardware. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and showed Officer Walsh the transaction. She examined it, then looked at Patricia. Miss Cunningham, this evidence suggests that Mr. Everett is telling the truth. Do you have any proof that this shovel belongs to you? Patricia's face was turning an alarming shade of red. I don't need proof. I'm the HOA president. I was simply borrowing the shovel because mine broke, and I saw this one sitting in an open garage. I was going to return it. So you're admitting you took it from his garage? Officer Walsh asked. I was borrowing it. That's not theft. Taking someone's property without permission, even temporarily, is theft, madam. And you stated that you entered his garage to take it. The garage was open, I spoke up. Officer, my garage was closed last night. I specifically remember closing it. My question is how Patricia got in. Officer Walsh looked at me. Do you have a garage door opener? Yes, the standard remote control that came with the house. Do you have any security cameras? No, unfortunately not. Officer Walsh turned back to Patricia. Miss Cunningham, I'm going to need you to explain how you accessed Mr. Everett's garage. Patricia's confident facade was completely gone now. She looked panicked. I told you it was open. I just walked in and took the shovel because I thought it was mine. But you just said your shovel broke, so you knew it was not yours, Officer Walsh pointed out. Patricia stammered. I thought maybe someone had left it there. I don't know. This is harassment. I'm the victim here. This man has been threatening me. I have not threatened anyone, I said calmly. I simply asked for my property back. Officer Walsh sighed. Miss Cunningham, I'm going to return this shovel to Mr. Everett as the evidence clearly indicates it belongs to him. As for the theft charges, Mr. Everett, do you want to press charges? I thought about it for a moment. Part of me wanted to see Patricia face consequences for her actions, but another part of me just wanted this resolved. If she admits she took it and apologizes, I'll let it go. But I want it documented in case she tries something like this again. Patricia looked like she had swallowed something bitter. Fine, I took the shovel. I shouldn't have. I apologize. Officer Walsh handed me the shovel. Mr. Everett, I'm going to document this incident. Miss Cunningham, consider this a warning. Taking someone's property without permission is theft, regardless of your intentions. If Mr. Everett wanted to press charges, you could be facing criminal penalties. Patricia nodded stiffly, her eyes blazing with barely contained anger. I could tell this was far from over in her mind. Officer Walsh turned to me. Mr. Everett, regarding your garage, I recommend you check your door to make sure it's functioning properly. It's possible Miss Cunningham is telling the truth about it being open, even if you don't remember it that way. I'll check it, officer. Thank you for your help. Officer Walsh returned to her cruiser and drove away, leaving Patricia and me standing in the snow. Patricia stared at me with pure venom in her eyes. You're going to regret this, Frank, she said quietly. I promise you that. Is that a threat, Patricia? It's a statement of fact. You just made an enemy of the HOA president. Your life in this neighborhood is about to become very uncomfortable. I hefted my shovel over my shoulder, looking forward to it, and Patricia, stay out of my garage. I walked back to my house, feeling the weight of Patricia's glare on my back the entire way. When I got home, Jeff was waiting for me in my driveway. Dude, that was intense, he said. I got most of it on video if you need it. Thanks, Jeff, I appreciate it. Can you send that to me? Already did, texted it to you. Man, Patricia looked like she wanted to murder you. Yeah, I noticed. I have a feeling this isn't over. Probably not. But hey, at least you got your shovel back, and everyone saw what happened. Patricia's reputation is going to take a hit after this. Jeff was right about that. By the end of the day, the entire neighborhood knew about the incident. The HOA group chat was blowing up with messages, with some residents defending Patricia and others criticizing her. A few people reached out to me privately to express their support and share their own stories about Patricia's overreach. I spent the rest of the day clearing my driveway, using my recovered shovel with perhaps more vigor than necessary. Every time I drove the blade into the snow, I imagined it was Patricia's smug face. It was petty, but it made me feel better. That evening, I received an email from Patricia. The subject line read, HOA violation notice. My stomach sank as I opened it. The email was formal and cold, listing several supposed violations of HOA bylaws. According to Patricia, my house numbers were not the correct size per regulations. My mailbox post needed repainting. My front lawn had not been properly maintained in the fall, resulting in dead patches. And most ridiculously, my trash bins had been visible from the street for more than 12 hours after collection day, violating the aesthetic standards of the neighborhood. Each violation came with a fine of $200, totaling $800. The email stated that I had 10 days to remedy the violations and pay the fines, or further action would be taken. I read the email 3 times, my anger building with each pass. Every single violation was either completely fabricated or so minor that no reasonable person would care. This was Patricia's revenge for embarrassing her in front of the police. I forwarded the email to Jeff along with a message. Is she serious with this? Jeff replied within minutes. Dude, this is total BS. Your house is fine. She's just retaliating. You need to fight this. He was right, but fighting meant engaging with the HOA board, which consisted of Patricia and 2 other members who generally did whatever she told them to do. I had attended one HOA meeting when I first moved in, and it had been a bureaucratic nightmare of Robert's Rules of Order and parliamentary procedure used to shut down any dissent. Still, I was not going to just roll over and pay $800 in bogus fines. I spent the next hour researching HOA law in Vermont and drafting a response email. I pointed out that the alleged violations were either inaccurate or had not been properly documented according to the HOA's own bylaws, which required photographic evidence and 3 warnings before fines could be assessed. I also noted that the email constituted potential retaliation for my theft report, which could open the HOA up to legal liability. I sent the email and tried to put it out of my mind. I had work to do, deadlines to meet. But over the next few days, the situation continued to escalate. Patricia sent another email threatening legal action if I did not pay the fines. I received a formal letter from the HOA's attorney, which I suspected Patricia had drafted herself since she worked as a legal secretary. The letter made vague threats about liens on my property and forced compliance. I consulted with my own attorney, a woman named Rebecca Santos who specialized in property law. She reviewed all the correspondence and let out a low whistle. Your HOA president is either very brave or very stupid, Rebecca said. She's clearly retaliating against you, and she's documenting it beautifully. The timeline alone proves it. You report her for theft, and suddenly you have $800 in violations that were never mentioned before. So, what are my options? I asked. You can fight the fines through the HOA's internal dispute resolution process, which based on what you've told me is probably a kangaroo court. Or you can escalate this. File a complaint with the state, potentially sue the HOA for harassment. But honestly, my advice is to try to resolve this peacefully first. These things get expensive fast, and even if you win, you still have to live in this neighborhood. I thanked Rebecca and left her office feeling frustrated. I did not want to spend thousands of dollars on legal fees, but I also was not going to let Patricia bully me into paying bogus fines. When I got home, I noticed something odd. There were footprints in the snow leading around the side of my house toward my backyard. Fresh footprints, made within the last few hours based on how crisp they were. I followed them, my heart starting to pound. The footprints led to my back gate, which was slightly ajar. I knew I had latched it the last time I used it. I pushed it open and stepped into my backyard, and that was when I saw her. Patricia Cunningham was standing in my backyard, about 20 feet from my back door, holding her phone up and taking pictures of my property. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted. Patricia spun around, startled. For a moment, she looked genuinely afraid, but then her expression hardened. "I'm documenting HOA violations. As president, I have the right to inspect properties for compliance. You absolutely do not have the right to trespass on my property. Get out right now. This isn't trespassing. The HOA bylaws give me authority to conduct inspections." "No, they don't. I've read the bylaws. Any inspection requires 24 hours written notice and the homeowner's consent. You have neither. You're trespassing, and I want you off my property immediately." Patricia started walking toward the gate, but she moved slowly, deliberately, making it clear she was leaving on her own terms, not because I told her to. "Fine. I have all the photos I need anyway. Expect another violation notice. Your back fence is not up to code, and neither is your storage shed." She pushed past me and out the gate. I followed her to make sure she actually left, watching as she walked across my side yard and back to the street. My hands were shaking, and I realized I was breathing hard. The audacity of this woman was unbelievable. I immediately called Officer Walsh, who had given me her card after the shovel incident. I explained what had just happened, and she said she would come by to take a report. While I waited, I walked around my property, looking for any damage or anything else Patricia might have done. I did not find anything obvious, but the violation of having her in my backyard on my property without permission made me feel sick. Officer Walsh arrived about 30 minutes later. I explained the situation, showed her the footprints and the gate, and told her about the ongoing harassment from Patricia. "Mr. Everett, I'm going to be straight with you," Officer Walsh said. "This is getting into civil territory, which means the police can only do so much. But what happened today with her entering your property without permission, that is criminal trespassing. Do you want to press charges?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I want this documented. She's escalating, and I need a paper trail." Officer Walsh took detailed notes and photographs. Then she went to Patricia's house to get her statement. I watched from my window as Patricia answered the door, and I could see her animated gestures as she presumably explained her side of the story. Officer Walsh returned to my house after about 15 minutes. "Miss Cunningham claims she had authority to enter your property under HOA rules," Officer Walsh said. "I've advised her that HOA rules don't supersede property law, and that entering someone's property without permission is trespassing. She's been given a formal warning. If she enters your property again without permission, she can be arrested." "Thank you, officer. Mr. Everett, I'm concerned about this situation. This woman seems fixated on you, and that kind of behavior can escalate. I recommend you install security cameras and document everything. If she contacts you, save it. If she comes on your property, record it. Build a case." I thanked Officer Walsh and spent the rest of the evening researching security cameras. By midnight, I had ordered a comprehensive system with cameras covering my front door, garage, driveway, and backyard. They would arrive in 3 days. The next morning, I woke up to find that someone had filed a formal complaint against me with the HOA. Not just Patricia this time, but 2 other board members as well, Margaret Hendricks and Donald Fletcher. The complaint alleged that I was harassing the HOA president, interfering with her duties, and creating a hostile environment in the neighborhood. I read the complaint in disbelief. It accused me of verbally assaulting Patricia, threatening her, and making false reports to the police. It was a complete fabrication, a narrative constructed to make me look like the aggressor. The complaint stated that there would be a special HOA board meeting in 1 week to address my behavior, and that I was required to attend. Failure to attend would result in additional fines and potential legal action. I called Rebecca Santos again. She reviewed the complaint and shook her head. "This is a joke. They're trying to flip the script, make you the bad guy. We need to respond aggressively." Rebecca drafted a response that detailed the actual timeline of events, starting with Patricia stealing my shovel and continuing through her trespassing on my property. She included references to the police reports and stated that I would be recording the HOA meeting for my own protection. She also noted that if the HOA continued its pattern of harassment and retaliation, I would file a lawsuit for damages. The response was sent via certified mail, return receipt requested. I wanted proof that they had received it. The security cameras arrived 2 days later, and I spent an afternoon installing them. The system was impressive, with high-definition video, night vision, and motion detection alerts sent directly to my phone. I felt better knowing that my property was now protected, that any future incidents would be captured on video. I did not have to wait long to test the system. The night before the HOA meeting, my phone buzzed with a motion alert at 2:17 in the morning. I groggily opened the app and saw a figure moving around my front yard. I turned on all my outdoor lights and the figure froze, then quickly retreated. The camera had captured clear footage of Patricia Cunningham, wearing dark clothing, placing something near my mailbox before running back to her car parked down the street. I grabbed my coat and went outside to see what she had left. It was a small wooden sign that read, "HOA violation, failure to maintain property standards." The sign had been stuck into my front lawn. I pulled up the sign and brought it inside, then reviewed the camera footage. The video clearly showed Patricia's face, her car, and her license plate. She had trespassed again, and this time I had definitive proof. I did not wait until morning. I called the police non-emergency line and reported the trespassing, providing the video footage. An officer came out, reviewed the footage, and confirmed that it showed Patricia trespassing on my property. He said an arrest warrant would be issued, and Patricia would likely be picked up within the next 24 hours. The HOA meeting was scheduled for 7 o'clock the next evening in the community center at the entrance of our subdivision. I arrived 15 minutes early with Rebecca Santos, my laptop with the security footage queued up, and a thick folder of documentation. Jeff had offered to come as a witness, and about a dozen other neighbors showed up as well, apparently interested in the drama. Patricia was already there, sitting at a table at the front of the room with Margaret and Donald. She looked composed and confident, not like someone who had been creeping around my yard in the middle of the night. She had not been arrested yet, but I knew it was coming. "Good evening, everyone," Patricia said, calling the meeting to order. "We're here tonight to address serious concerns regarding Mr. Frank Everett and his behavior toward the HOA and its representatives." "Actually," Rebecca interrupted, standing up, We're here to address the HOA's systematic harassment of my client, including theft, trespassing, and retaliation. I'm Rebecca Santos, Mr. Everett's attorney, and I'll be recording these proceedings." Patricia's smile faltered. "This is a closed HOA meeting. You can't record it. According to Vermont law, any party to a conversation can record it. Since my client is required to be here, he is a party and we will be recording. If you have a problem with that, we can leave right now and handle this matter in court." Margaret and Donald exchanged nervous glances. Patricia looked like she wanted to argue but thought better of it. "Fine. Let the record show that Mr. Everett is recording this meeting against the board's wishes." The meeting proceeded, with Patricia presenting her complaint against me. She painted a picture of a belligerent homeowner who refused to follow rules, harassed the HOA president, and made false accusations to authorities. She conveniently left out the parts about stealing my shovel and trespassing on my property. When she finished, Rebecca stood up. "Thank you for that creative fiction, Miss Cunningham. Now let me present the facts." Rebecca went through the timeline methodically, presenting evidence for each claim. She showed my receipt for the shovel, Jeff's testimony about seeing Patricia with it, and the police report from the theft. She showed the retaliatory emails and fine notices that were sent immediately after I reported the theft. She showed photos of the fabricated violations. And then, she pulled up the security camera footage. "This video was recorded at 2:17 this morning," Rebecca said, projecting the footage onto the wall. "It clearly shows Miss Cunningham trespassing on my client's property in the middle of the night to place a violation sign in his yard. This is the second time she has trespassed, and a police report has been filed." The room went silent as everyone watched the video. Patricia's face drained of color. That's not. I was acting in my capacity as HOA president," Patricia stammered. "At 2 in the morning. By sneaking onto his property under cover of darkness," Rebecca said. "Miss Cunningham, you've committed multiple crimes against my client, and you've abused your position as HOA president to retaliate against him for reporting those crimes. My client is prepared to file a lawsuit against you personally and the HOA for harassment, unless this matter is resolved immediately." Donald spoke up for the first time. "What kind of resolution are you looking for?" "First, all fines and violation notices against Mr. Everett are rescinded. Second, Miss Cunningham resigns as HOA president, effective immediately. Third, the HOA issues a written apology to my client. Fourth, Miss Cunningham agrees to a restraining order prohibiting her from contacting Mr. Everett or coming onto his property. If these conditions are met, Mr. Everett will not pursue a civil lawsuit. However, the criminal charges for trespassing will proceed as those are not within our control." Patricia stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This is ridiculous. I am not resigning. I have done nothing wrong. That video doesn't prove anything." "It proves you trespassed," Rebecca said calmly, "and actually the police agree. There's a warrant out for your arrest, Miss Cunningham. It should be served any time now." As if on cue, there was a knock at the community center door. Officer Walsh entered, followed by another officer. Patricia saw them and her eyes went wide. "Patricia Cunningham," Officer Walsh said. "Yes." Patricia's voice was barely a whisper. "You're under arrest for criminal trespassing." Officer Walsh approached with handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." The room erupted in chaos as Patricia protested, but Officer Walsh continued reading her Miranda rights while placing her in handcuffs. Patricia was crying now, her carefully constructed facade completely shattered. "This isn't fair. I'm the HOA president. You can't do this." "Madam, you trespassed on private property multiple times after being warned. That's a crime, regardless of your position in the HOA," Officer Walsh said firmly. They led Patricia out of the community center in handcuffs, past all the neighbors who had come to watch her try to crucify me. The irony was not lost on anyone. Margaret and Donald sat in stunned silence. Finally, Margaret cleared her throat. "Mr. Everett, Miss Santos, I think we can agree to your terms. The board will vote to rescind all fines and violations against you. I move that Patricia Cunningham be removed from her position as HOA president, effective immediately." "I second," Donald said quickly. "All in favor?" Margaret asked. "Aye," they both said in unison. The motion passes. "Mr. Everett, on behalf of the HOA, I apologize for this situation. This should never have happened." Rebecca nodded. "We'll expect the written apology and documentation of the rescinded violations within 48 hours. As for the restraining order, we'll file for that separately. I trust Miss Cunningham will not be a problem once she's released from custody, but we'll take legal precautions anyway." The meeting adjourned shortly after that. As we walked to the parking lot, Jeff caught up with me. "Dude, that was insane. Patricia got arrested. Did you see her face?" I felt a mix of satisfaction and exhaustion. "Yeah, I saw. Honestly, I'm just glad it's over." "Think she'll come after you again?" "Not if she has any sense. She's facing criminal charges, she lost her HOA position, and if she violates a restraining order, she'll end up in even more trouble." "Man, all this over a shovel." "It was never about the shovel," I said. "It was about her thinking she could do whatever she wanted and never face consequences. She stole from me, trespassed on my property twice, and tried to ruin my life because I dared to stand up to her." Jeff nodded thoughtfully. "Well, I'm glad you fought back. A lot of people would have just paid the fines and tried to keep their heads down. That's what she was counting on." Over the next few weeks, the neighborhood slowly returned to normal. Patricia was charged with 2 counts of criminal trespassing and eventually pleaded guilty, receiving a fine, probation, and a permanent restraining order keeping her away from me and my property. The HOA board elected Margaret as the new president, and she turned out to be far more reasonable than Patricia had ever been. The written apology arrived as promised, along with documentation that all violations and fines had been removed from my record. I had Rebecca review everything to make sure it was legitimate, and once she gave the all clear, I finally felt like I could relax. The security cameras stayed up, and I kept all the documentation from the incident in a safe place, just in case. But as winter turned to spring and spring to summer, Patricia never bothered me again. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she had put her house up for sale and was moving out of state. One warm afternoon in May, I was working in my garden when Jeff came over with a couple of beers. We sat on my back deck, watching the sun set behind the trees. "You know," Jeff said, "I've been thinking about what happened with Patricia. The whole thing was crazy, but I learned something from watching you handle it." "Yeah, what's that?" "That sometimes you have to stand up to bullies, even when it's easier to back down. Patricia had been pushing people around for years, and nobody challenged her because it seemed like too much hassle. But you didn't let her get away with it, and now the whole neighborhood is better off." I took a sip of my beer, considering his words. "I almost didn't fight it, you know. I almost just paid the fines and moved on. It would have been simpler." "But you didn't. You stood your ground. That takes guts, or stubbornness. I'm not always sure which." Jeff laughed. "Sometimes they're the same thing." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, enjoying the evening. The nightmare with Patricia seemed like a distant memory now, something that had happened to someone else. But I knew the lessons would stick with me. I had learned that HOA boards were not above the law, that bullies would only push as far as you let them, and that sometimes the right thing to do was also the hardest thing to do. My life in Maplewood Heights continued peacefully after that. The new HOA board was reasonable, the neighbors were friendlier, and I never again had to worry about someone sneaking into my garage to steal my snow shovel. I kept that shovel in a place of honor in my garage, a reminder of the day I stood up to a tyrant and won. The experience also taught me about documentation and preparation. Every email, every police report, every piece of video footage had been crucial in proving my case. Without that evidence, it would have been my word against Patricia's, and as HOA president, she might have won. But because I documented everything and sought legal help when needed, justice prevailed. I also learned about community. Jeff and the other neighbors who supported me during the conflict became genuine friends. We started having regular cookouts in the summer, helping each other with yard work, and building the kind of neighborhood community that HOAs are supposedly designed to foster, but often destroy through overreach and petty tyranny. The following winter, when another blizzard hit Brattleboro, I was fully prepared. My garage was organized, my snow removal equipment was in perfect condition, and my security cameras were recording 24 hours a day. But this time, when I went out to clear my driveway, my shovel was exactly where I had left it. I took my time clearing the snow, enjoying the physical labor and the crisp winter air. Neighbors waved as they worked on their own driveways. Margaret sent out a reminder about the 24-hour snow removal rule, but it was friendly and reasonable, not a threat. The neighborhood felt like a community again, not a police state. As I finished up and leaned on my shovel, catching my breath, I thought about how different this winter was from the last one. A year ago, I had been engaged in a war with my HOA president. Now, I was just a guy clearing his driveway after a snowstorm, living peacefully in a neighborhood that finally felt like home. Jeff came walking up my driveway, his own snow removal complete. "Hey Frank, a few of us are heading to Murphy's Bar for lunch. Want to come?" "Yeah, that sounds great." Let me put my shovel away. I opened my garage and carefully stored my shovel in its designated spot, that red-handled, metal-bladed shovel that had caused so much trouble. As I looked at it, I could not help but smile. It was just a shovel, a simple tool for moving snow. But it had become a symbol of something more important, a reminder that standing up for yourself mattered, that justice was worth fighting for, and that even the smallest acts of courage could make a difference. I closed the garage door, made sure it was securely latched, and headed off to lunch with Jeff. The sun was shining, the snow was sparkling, and life in Maplewood Heights was exactly as it should be. Patricia was gone, the HOA was functional again, and my shovel was safely in my garage where it belonged. As we drove to the restaurant, Jeff brought up the whole Patricia situation one more time. "You know, I still can't believe she actually got arrested at the HOA meeting." "Like, what are the odds of that timing?" "Rebecca coordinated it with the police," I admitted. "She called them before the meeting and told them where Patricia would be and when. It was strategic," Jeff laughed. "Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Patricia thought she was going to humiliate you in front of everyone, and instead she got led away in handcuffs." "I didn't want it to go that far," I said honestly. "I just wanted my shovel back and for her to leave me alone." But she kept escalating, and eventually there were legal consequences for her actions. "You feel bad about what happened to her?" I thought about it carefully. "No, I feel bad that it had to happen, if that makes sense. I wish Patricia had just returned my shovel and apologized. None of the rest of it needed to happen. But she made her choices, and those choices had consequences." That's not on me. Fair enough, Jeff said. At Murphy's bar, we met up with several other neighbors. The conversation flowed easily, jumping from sports to work to neighborhood gossip. It struck me how much more relaxed everyone seemed compared to a year ago. Patricia's reign as HOA president had created an atmosphere of fear and stress, where people worried about minor violations and arbitrary fines. Now, people could just live their lives without looking over their shoulders. One of the neighbors, a woman named Carol who lived at the far end of the subdivision, approached me during lunch. "Frank, I wanted to thank you for what you did with Patricia. I know it must have been stressful, but you probably don't know how much she was harassing other people too." "Really?" I asked. "Oh yes. She tried to fine me $300 because my son's basketball hoop was 6 inches too close to the street. She sent violation notices to the elderly couple at the corner because their lawn had clover growing in it. She even tried to force the Jenkins family to remove their garden because she said it was an eyesore, even though it was in their backyard and you could barely see it from the street. I had no idea it was that widespread. Most people were too afraid to fight back. But when you stood up to her, it showed everyone else that she wasn't all-powerful. After she got arrested, several of us submitted formal complaints to the board about her behavior. That's part of why Margaret was so quick to vote her out. This was news to me. I had been so focused on my own situation that I had not realized I was part of a larger pattern of abuse. It made me feel better about pursuing the charges, knowing that Patricia had been hurting multiple people and needed to be stopped. The months continued to pass peacefully. Spring brought blooming flowers and green grass. Summer brought cookouts and block parties. Fall brought changing leaves and the smell of wood smoke from chimneys. And when winter came around again, another year after the shovel incident, it felt like ancient history. I had mostly put the whole thing out of my mind when I received an unexpected message. It was from Patricia, sent through Facebook Messenger. My first instinct was to delete it without reading, but curiosity got the better of me. The message read, "Frank, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. I'm not supposed to contact you, but I'm sending this anyway because I need to say it. What I did to you was wrong. I stole your shovel, I trespassed on your property, and I tried to use my position to bully you into backing down. I've spent the last year and a half in therapy trying to understand why I acted that way, and I've realized that I had serious control issues. Being HOA president gave me power, and I abused it. You weren't my only victim, but you were the one who finally stood up to me. I'm not asking for forgiveness, and I'm not asking you to respond to this message. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did, I'm sorry for it, and I'm working on being a better person. I've moved to New Hampshire and started fresh. I'm no longer involved in any HOAs. Again, I'm sorry. Patricia." I read the message 3 times. Part of me was angry that she had violated the restraining order to send it. Part of me was skeptical about whether her apology was genuine, but a small part of me felt something like relief. Not forgiveness exactly, but closure. I did not respond to the message. I took a screenshot of it, sent it to Rebecca Santos for documentation, and then deleted it. If Patricia was truly trying to be better, that was her journey, not mine. I had moved on, and I did not need to engage with her to feel complete. That evening, I sat in my living room with a cup of coffee, looking out at the snow-covered neighborhood. My security cameras were recording, my shovel was in my garage, and my life was peaceful. The nightmare with Patricia had been one of the more stressful experiences of my life, but I had survived it, and I was stronger for it. I thought about all the people who deal with abusive HOA boards, tyrannical presidents, and petty power plays. I thought about how many people pay unfair fines or tolerate harassment because fighting back seems too hard. And I hope that my story, if anyone ever heard it, might inspire someone else to stand their ground. Because at the end of the day, it was not really about a shovel. It was about respect, boundaries, and the fundamental principle that no one, not even an HOA president, is above the law. It was about refusing to be bullied, documenting everything, and being willing to see things through to the end. The next morning, I woke up to fresh snow falling gently outside my window. I made breakfast, checked my work emails, and then bundled up to go clear my driveway. As I opened my garage door, I paused for a moment to look at my shovel, still hanging in its place on the wall. "Just a shovel," I said out loud, and I grabbed it off the wall. But it was not just a shovel. It was a reminder of the time I refused to back down, the time I stood up for myself against someone who thought she was untouchable. It was a symbol of justice, perseverance, and the importance of standing your ground. I spent an hour clearing my driveway, waving to neighbors as they did the same. The sun came out, turning the snow into a blanket of diamonds. My back ached pleasantly from the work, and my cheeks stung from the cold. It was a perfect winter morning in Brattleboro, Vermont, and I was exactly where I was supposed to be. When I finished, I put my shovel away, closed my garage door, and went inside to warm up. My phone buzzed with a message from Margaret, the current HOA president, reminding everyone about the upcoming neighborhood meeting to discuss spring landscaping plans. The message was friendly and informative, nothing like Patricia's threatening emails. I responded with a thumbs-up emoji and settled onto my couch with my laptop to start my workday. Outside, the snow continued to fall, but I knew I had nothing to worry about. My driveway was clear, my property was secure, and my shovel was safely where it belonged. Life in Maplewood Heights had returned to what it should have always been, a community of neighbors helping each other, not a dictatorship run by a power-hungry HOA president. And while I would never forget the stress and anger of those months dealing with Patricia, I could finally think about it without that tight feeling in my chest. I had learned valuable lessons about standing up for yourself, about the importance of documentation, and about how easily power can corrupt if left unchecked. But I had also learned about the kindness of neighbors, the value of good legal advice, and the simple truth that justice, while sometimes slow, usually prevails in the end. As I worked through the afternoon, my mind occasionally drifted back to that snowy morning when I discovered my shovel was missing. If I had known then how much chaos that simple theft would cause, would I have handled it differently? Would I have just let Patricia keep the shovel and bought a new one, avoiding all the conflict? No, I would not have. Because letting her get away with it would have meant letting her continue to abuse her power, to terrorize the neighborhood, to make people's lives miserable for no reason other than her own need for control. By standing up to her, I had not just defended myself. I had defended every neighbor she had harassed, and I had set a boundary that needed to be set. The sun was setting by the time I finished work. I made myself dinner, poured a glass of wine, and sat by the window watching the neighborhood settle in for the night. Lights came on in houses up and down the street. Smoke rose from chimneys. A few kids were building a snowman in a yard across the street. This was what a neighborhood should be. Not a battleground, not a place of stress and fear, but a home, a community. A place where people looked out for each other, where disagreements were handled reasonably, and where a stolen shovel was just a mistake, not an act of war. But Patricia had made it an act of war, and I had been forced to fight. And in the end, justice had prevailed. Patricia lost her position, faced criminal charges, and was forced to confront the consequences of her actions. The neighborhood was better off without her reign of terror. As I finished my wine and prepared for bed that night, I thought about how strange life could be. A simple snowstorm had set off a chain of events that changed my neighborhood, taught me invaluable lessons, and showed me the importance of standing up for what was right. All because of a shovel. I brushed my teeth, checked the locks on my doors, and glanced at my security camera app to make sure everything was recording properly. Then I climbed into bed, confident that when I woke up the next morning, my property would be secure, my belongings would be where I left them, and my life would continue peacefully. The nightmare with Patricia Cunningham was over. The shovel was back where it belonged. And I had learned that sometimes the smallest act of theft can lead to the biggest lessons about justice, courage, and standing your ground. Maplewood Heights was finally the community it was meant to be, and I was proud to call it home.